Here's the age-old question. Is it better to quit your job, get fired, or get laid off? Well, stick around because in this video, we're going to break it down. Hey everybody, it's Brian from Life After Layoff, and today I want to talk about the best way to leave your job. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more career-related content just like this directly from a corporate recruiter, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and you might also want to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future posts. So this question came up recently that if you're in an interview process and the employer wants to know why you left your last job, is it better to quit your job, get fired, or to get laid off? So we're going to look at this from different angles, the pros and the cons of each one, as it relates to both the job interview and to you as the employee. All right, so let's talk about the first one, which is quitting your job. If you decide to quit your job, you are going out on your own terms, and it's the ultimate acting like a free agent that I talk about so much on this channel, because not only are you recognizing the current trajectory in your career and where you are today, but you also know that by making this move proactively out of an organization, you're going to be bettering yourself. And sometimes you need to make drastic changes to get ahead, especially if you're somebody that's been in a company for a long period of time. The market's probably passed you by, and you're likely going to see bigger pay increases as you exit your current employer and test the open market. In addition to the free agency and taking ownership of your career, one of the other big advantages is that you're going out on your own terms. You are picking and choosing very carefully when to exit the business, and you probably already have a job lined up, so you're fully prepared to make that move. And I can't underscore the importance of having that advantage. The folks who have gotten laid off would love to trade places. And if you do it correctly, you could be potentially eligible for rehire. And if things ever turn south with the new employer or we head into a bad economy, that might be something very valuable to keep in your back pocket. It's always nice to be able to go back to a previous employer as a little bit of a safety net. And besides, we all know when you have a job, it is much easier to get another job, mainly because there's not that pressure. You're not being forced into taking the first job that comes your way. And of course, when you're sitting in an interview process as an unemployed person, it's gonna be a lot more stressful for you. But when you have a job already, it's a lot less pressure, and you can relax and sell yourself more easily. And you generally have a little bit more negotiating power on your side because, simply put, you don't really need that job. And not to mention, you'll have the initiative to essentially spin the reason why you left in an interview, because inevitably somebody in that interview panel is going to ask you why you left your previous position. And because you quit, you probably have a better reason for it. Now, it's not all peaches and cream in the quitting our job land, because there could be some negatives associated with it as well. And keeping in line with properly quitting your job, if you are the person who did kick over the planner and burn those bridges, you may find yourself not being eligible for rehire even though you quit. And you might also find, hey, the grass isn't actually greener. The new employer is the same as the old employer, or the market conditions changed. But you find out that your previous job that you left has already been filled. And more importantly, when you leave, you're not going to get any severance package for it. You're going to walk away and leave everything behind. And of course, if you voluntarily leave your job, you're likely not going to be able to collect unemployment, although there are a few circumstances in which you might. If it was a toxic work environment and that was the only option that you had, you may be able to still collect. But if you simply voluntarily left your job because you were tired of it and you just wanted to change, the likelihood of you getting unemployment is very, very slim. All right, so let's talk about the next one, and that's getting fired. Of course, this one's pretty obvious. The employer decides to end your employment arrangement. And getting fired doesn't usually have too many positives, so this one is going to be a little bit of a shorter list. The main and possibly only reason why you'd want to get fired over quitting your job would be that there's a possibility that you could collect unemployment. Put an asterisk here and say just because you're fired doesn't mean you're automatically going to be eligible for unemployment. If you were fired for some gross negligence, you caused a fight, you stole from the company, in other words, something for cause, you likely would be denied unemployment. On the flip side, you would generally get it if you were just a poor performer. So you just weren't really good at your job and you got written up, got put on a performance improvement plan, all that kind of stuff. An employer's gonna have a hard time defending an unemployment claim, and you're likely gonna get it. So if you're getting fired for performance-related issues, it may not be the worst thing that could happen to you. Of course, there's a lot of negatives that come with being fired. Most importantly, there's a stigma associated with it. Going home and telling your significant other that you got terminated is probably not a very comfortable conversation. But there's also the conversations that you're going to have in the interview process, because you're going to have to explain away poor performance, or potentially something a little bit harder to discuss. Another major disadvantage to getting fired is it's not on your own terms. You're at the mercy of an employer who may or may not give you warning. Some people have the advantage, if you could call it that, of going through a PIP or a performance improvement plan, which will give them time to start activating a job search. But in the case of gross negligence or something that happens that causes an immediate termination, it's obviously not on your terms, and you might find yourself thrust into the unemployment market faster than you're expecting. And it goes without saying that you're probably not going to be eligible for rehire should you get terminated from your employer. And I'll take that a step further and say that it's probably going to be difficult for you to get any kind of positive references from them. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about an employer doing an employment verification because they generally will not disclose whether or not you've been terminated. However, they may check references, so you want to make sure that you've got that figured out. And finally, we have being laid off. Of course, this is when an employer decides to eliminate your job altogether and you no longer have a role. And while it could be performance related, oftentimes it isn't. But one of the biggest advantages of being laid off is that you generally don't have to fight for unemployment. You're almost always going to get it. Perhaps the biggest advantage of being laid off versus being fired or quitting your job is that in a lot of layoff situations, you would be eligible or qualify for a company's severance package. And these usually consist of a lump sum amount of money. They may pay out a continuation of benefits for a period of time. You may get access to outplacement. And one of the other advantages to being laid off is that you might be eligible for rehire depending on your work performance. One big disadvantage to being laid off is that it's rarely on your own terms. And in fact, as we've been finding out in 2022 and 2023, that a lot of people are caught completely off guard, have no idea it's coming until they get an email in their inbox or a meeting notice from their boss with HR on the call. And if you're somebody that's a good performer and you're not prepared, that can be especially devastating because let's face it, most people are not adequately prepared to weather the storm of a layoff. And another disadvantage of the layoff is that if you are going through a mass layoff event, you could find yourself under abnormally stiff competition because there's a lot of other people coming into the labor market all at the same time looking for the same types of jobs as you. So the importance of having a resume that really stands out becomes all that more important. And whether we like it or not, there is some stigma going to be associated with a layoff in an interview setting. Whether we like it or not, employers tend to bias and think that a laid off person is somehow damaged goods. Of course, on this channel, we know that that's not the case. However, that's the perception that we're up against. So it's up to us to really know how to present ourselves in those interviews when we get them. So let's walk through a couple specific scenarios here. Let's suppose that you're somebody that has a track record of poor performance and you notice the human resource department is starting to document you. They're starting to pressure you and potentially you're even on a PIP. Some people may say, yeah, to heck with it, I'm going to quit and save face. But it might actually be better to get terminated if it's strictly performance related. In other words, you're just not doing a good job, you're in over your head, maybe the job is just not a good fit for you. If you get fired, you're going to be able to collect that unemployment and you're going to have at least some continuation of your benefits. And in that case, there's no real advantage to quitting your job. You're still not going to have a positive reference because you already have that negative goodwill. You're not going to be eligible for rehire, so there's really no reason why you wouldn't want to get terminated. And another scenario that's probably unfortunately becoming more and more common is if you know that the industry you're in or the broader market is starting to soften, like we're potentially seeing right now, and your company has not announced a layoff yet, you may want to hang out a little bit before you quit because there's nothing worse than quitting your job and then 2 or 3 weeks later finding out that an organization just had a major layoff and you were likely going to get wrapped up in it anyway, and you missed out on a pretty hefty severance package. Now, from an employer's perspective in an interview, of course, being terminated for cause is going to be the hardest one to overcome because inevitably once you admit that you have been terminated, it is going to cause some red flags with the employer. They're going to start to question things a little bit more deeply, and then they're going to start looking back at your resume a little bit more closely to try to determine what exactly happened and if you're a risk for that business. If you're somebody that got laid off and you're going through an interview, if it's a mass layoff event like we're seeing now, I probably wouldn't be overly worried about trying to justify it. You can just simply say, I got caught up in a mass reduction in force. However, you still might run into a bias from a potentially outdated boss. And of course, quitting your job gives you the best strength, and that would be the most preferable one, but employers still want to know that you have good reasons for quitting jobs and not that you just got upset and you decided to leave a tough situation. So hopefully you'll be able to show some overcoming of adversity and you'll be able to hit it out of the park with that interview. So if you're in the situation where you think you're going to be subject to any one of these and you need some more help, that's actually something that I specialize in. I do have a website called alifeafterlayoff.com, and it's dedicated to helping people get back on their feet as quickly as possible. But it's not just for people who got laid off. It could be for people who got terminated or people who are looking to make a change in their situation. I do have some of my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. The first one is called Resume Rocketfuel, which is designed to teach you how to write a recruiter-approved resume that's going to give you the best chance of getting into that interview process, because recruiters are going to have a higher likelihood of noticing you. Once you get into that interview process, though, it's up to you to sell yourself throughout the rest of it, and that's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. It's going to take you through each step of that interview process, give you tips, tools, and techniques to ultimately ace it, and then hopefully land that dream offer. And of course, we help you negotiate and get those terms. And oftentimes that chapter pays for itself tenfold. But if you want to skip the recruiter altogether, especially in a very tight labor market where you're applying to jobs where there's 2,000 plus people, you want to make sure that your LinkedIn game is on point. So I actually created a course called Unlocking LinkedIn, which teaches you how to take advantage of the employment market on LinkedIn where recruiters are recruiting, and try to skip those long lines and move right to the front. It's also going to teach you how to access some of those hidden jobs, because there actually is a thing called the hidden job market, and it really does exist. And you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that and building networks that actually produce results. So if you're struggling with your LinkedIn game, you're not getting noticed, you want to skip right to the front of the line, make sure you check out my course, Unlocking LinkedIn. And if you're somebody that's looking for more personalized help, I do offer some limited one-on-one coaching sessions. You can reach me through my website for that. All the links will be listed below. Hopefully you're not dealing with getting fired or getting laid off, but if you are, I'm here to help you. So I appreciate you watching this video, and I will see you on the next one.